Hi, my name is Ryan O'Donnell, and I'm still reading The Way of Kindness. Um, and so last chapter was chapter 2, and at the end of chapter 2, they have a few quotes, and then we'll go on to chapter 3. A good heart, a heart like a house. Irwin Shaw. Constant kindness can accomplish much. As the sun makes ice melt, kindness causes misunderstanding, mistrust, and hostility to evaporate. Albert Schweitzer. Kindness and compassion towards all living things is a mark of civilized society. Conversely, cruelty, whether it is directed against human beings or against animals, is not the exclusive province of any one culture or community of people. Racism, economic deprival, dogfighting and cockfighting, bullfighting and rodeos are all cut from the same fabric. Violence. Only when we have become nonviolent toward all life, we will have learned to live well ourselves. Cesar Chavez. Imagine what our real neighborhoods would be like if each of us offered, as a matter of course, just one kind word to another person. One kind word has a wonderful way of turning into many. Fred Rogers. Chapter 3. Memories of Unkindness by Joan Chittister. Once a brother committed a sin in Sictus, and the elders assembled and sent for Abba Moses. He, however, did not want to go. Then the priest sent a message to him saying, "Come, everybody is waiting for you." So he finally got up to go, and he took a worn-out basket with holes, filled it with sand, and carried it along. The people who came to meet him said, "What is this?" Then the old man said, "My sins are running out behind me, yet I do not see them. And today I have come to judge the sins of someone else." When they heard this, they said nothing to the brother and pardoned him. The desert monastics are clear. Self-righteousness is cruelty done in the name of justice. It is conceivable, of course, that we might find a self-righteous religious. It is feasible that we, like Abba Moses, could certainly find a self-righteous cleric. It's probable that I might find very well myself dealing with a self-righteous friend, or neighbor, or even family member. But it is not possible to find a self-righteous contemplative, not a real contemplative. Contemplation breaks us open to ourselves. The fruit of contemplation is self-knowledge, not self-justification. The nearer we draw to God, Abba Moses says, the more we see ourselves as sinners. We see ourselves as we really are, and knowing ourselves, we cannot condemn the other. We remember with a blush the public sin that made us mortal. We recognize with dismay the private sin that curls within us in fear of exposure. Then the whole world changes when we know ourselves. We gentle it. The fruit of self-knowledge is kindness. Broken ourselves, we bind tenderly to the wounds of the other. The most telling measure of the meaning of kindness in life is memories of unkindness in our very own. Scenes from a childhood marked by the cruelty of other children. Recollections of disdain that scar the heart. Moments of scorn or rejection that leave a person feeling marginalized in the human community. In these moments of isolation, we remember the impact of the fracturing of hope. We feel again the pain that comes with the assault on the silver dignity that refuses to die in us. However much degradation of the moment, it is then that we come to understand that kindness, compassion, understanding, acceptance is the irrefutable mark of holiness, because we ourselves have known, or perhaps have never known, the balm of kindness for which we so desperately thirsted in those situations. Kindness is an act of God that makes the dry dust of rejection digestible to the human psyche. Cruelty is not the fruit of contemplation. Those who have touched the God who lives within themselves, with all their struggles, all their lack, see God everywhere, and most of all in the helpless, fragile pleading frightened other. Contemplatives do not judge the heart of another by a scale on which they themselves could not be vindicated. The pitfall of the religion of perfection is self-righteousness, that cancer of the soul that requires more of others than it demands of itself, and so erodes its fiber even more. It is an inner blindness that counts the sins of others, but has no eye for itself. The self-righteous soul, the soul that preens on its own virtue, denies itself the self-knowledge that enables God to ignore what is lacking in us because our hearts are on the right way. It blocks the Spirit of life from filling up the gaps within us that we ourselves are helpless to repair because the soul is not ready to receive. Real contemplatives receive the other with the open arms of God because they have come to know that for all their emptiness, God has received them. To be a contemplative, it is necessary to take in without reservation those whom the world casts out, because it is they who show us most clearly the face of the waiting God. Chapter 4. My acts of kindness always yield craziness. Amy Morris Young. When my husband Dan and I started dating, and we were getting to know each other, one of the first memorable things he said to me was, "You are generous," to a fault. I remember focusing my etched-glass laser Catholic lady stare on him. I had a bunch of retorts swimming in my head, such as, all my bills get paid first, my kids get fed and clothed first, I never give it more than what is left over. But what I said was, I know, I can't help it. Because he was right, in a way. I sense that trying to explain my compulsion to give stuff or money away isn't complicated. It goes so deep in my Irish Italian Catholic DNA, back through 16 years of Catholic school. It is as much a part of me as my eye color, or loud laugh, or needing a drop of lasagna when someone is sick or hurt. It is hard to talk about this, as it sounds like I am tooting my own horn, which is the opposite of what giving should be. But never fear, each and every kind act of my life seems to be written by Woody Allen. Something inevitably goes wrong. I'm pretty sure God does this so we never get to feel too good about ourselves. I am always humbler and stupider after doing something nice. That's the deal. How I know all is right with the world. In the 1969 movie, Take the Money and Run, Allen plays Virgil, the bank robber, who hands a hastily written hold-up note to the teller. They quibble over whether the word is gun or gub, and the next scene, find Virgil in jail. This is how all my acts of kindness invariably go. But even knowing that I am bound, at the very least, to make a total fool of myself, and at most, risk incarceration or some other disaster, I simply can't help myself. The words from a song, whatsoever you do to the least of my brothers, based on the passage from Matthew 25:31-40, start repeating through me like a roll in the player piano, each time I encounter a chance to help. It is undeniable and takes me right back to the first grade, on my knees, leaning on the altar railing at De La Salle Church in Granada Hills, California, singing, "When I was hungry, you gave me to eat. When I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. Now enter into the home of your Father. When I was homeless, you opened the door. When I was naked, you gave me your coat. Now enter into the home of your Father." That, and the song from the prayer of St. Francis, "Make me a channel of your peace," do me in every time. For example, once I was walking from the parking lot to my office on a snowy day. I was wearing a warm, knitted cap, scarf, and mittens. I had a couple extra pairs of those cheap $2 mittens from the drugstore in my backpack. I kept a whole drawer of them at home, as my 3 kids were forever losing them. I saw a woman walking across the street from me without a coat, wearing a light cotton dress and only a tied bandana on her head. Her bare hands were bright red. No brainer, right? I had 3 pairs of mittens. She had none. Duh. Roll song. I crossed the street, digging in my backpack as I went, then stood in front of the lady holding out a pair of mittens with a big cheesy smile on my face. Only then did I become aware that she was a recent immigrant from somewhere in Eastern Europe. Her eyes were huge with alarm, and she waved me off, her hands pushing me away. I insisted, pushing the mittens at her. She started crying. Via our horrible mix of English and what I took to be Russian, I somehow figured out she thought I was accusing her of stealing the mittens. I pushed them back at her. No, these are your mittens. Take them. She was nearly hysterical now, looking around for help, her face clearly typographed. Someone save me from the insane mitten lady. Exasperated, I threw the mittens at her. She caught them, and I ran as fast as I could across the street, not looking back, ducking into my office building. Welcome to my charitable world. Or another time, I was walking to the same building and I saw a homeless lady sleeping on the lawn, her body partially covered by a blue plastic tarp. The only way I knew she was under there was that one of her hands and some of her gray curly hair stuck out, laying on the damp grass. Again, there goes that music. I leaned over and tried to slip a $5 bill under the tarp near her limp head. Suddenly, her dry, bony hand grabbed my wrist. She reared out of the tarp like a skinny lion, screaming in my face, accusing me of trying to steal that money from her. I stumbled backwards, untangling our hands, and fell backwards on the wet grass. Green grass stained down the entire leg of my work pants. Check. An angry homeless lady waving a $5 bill and screaming obscenities at me as I trudged back to my office. Check. Another great moment in charity land. Oscar Wilde famously said, "No good deed goes unpunished." And while I think he meant to sound worldly and cynical, I have to agree with him, but in a good way. The point, I hope, is that these moments are not about making me feel better. They're about doing what we can, even when we know it will all result in a crazy comedy of errors. Years ago, I lifted something too heavy on the job. It hurt my neck. I took labor and industries a full year to acknowledge that I was not only really hurt and not faking it, but needed surgery. I was in teeth-chattering pain, my left arm didn't function well, and I could only work about half the day before I fell asleep on my desk from exhaustion. Pretty soon I had used up all my sick leave. I was a single mom with 3 little kids, and we were limping along on half pay. It was terrifying and lonely and desperate. That Thanksgiving and Christmas I cried tears of relief when the local Christian church delivered charity boxes to our front porch. Without them, there was no way I could have provided holiday meals for my kids. My 2 boys, Nick and Duncan, were oblivious about where the sudden gush of groceries came, but my teenage daughter, Chelsea, was mortified. She begged me to hide the gift-wrapped boxes of food in our garage so her friends wouldn't see. After I recovered from my neck surgery the following spring, I told my kids from now on we would always adopt families during the holidays. It was a tangible way to say thank you for the generosity that had so helped us and pay it forward. But that first Christmas, when my kids and I delivered the wrapped gifts and boxes of groceries to our adopted food bank family, they acted anything but grateful. The mother actually asked us for more money, which I did not have, and better presents. We piled back into our van, and the boys in the back seat, Chelsea in the front with me. As we were driving home, she said, "Well, that's the last time we were doing that." I said, "What do you mean?" She folded her arms. "They were totally ungrateful and mean to us." I reached over and touched her leg. "Do you think maybe that mom was embarrassed?" Chelsea's eyes narrowed. "Huh?" I lightly squeezed her leg. "I mean, she never thought she would need to be given charity boxes to give her kids food and gifts. I never did, Chelsea, but it sure happened to us, right?" She nodded. "I was embarrassed too. I thought I would always be the one giving those boxes away, not getting them, But stuff happens. She might feel the same way." But Chelsea's face showed confusion. "You weren't mean when we got that stuff last year." I nodded, putting my hand back on the steering wheel. "True, but if there is one thing I have learned about giving, it is very rarely it is about how good it makes you feel. It is about doing the right thing." even when it makes you feel mad or bad, yes? She sighed. Well, that's dumb. Yes, ma'am, I agreed. Yes, it is. She smiled then. We both did. One day I was walking with my son Nick. As we started across the street at a crosswalk, we almost literally bumped into our neighbor in his van, waiting to turn right. He had his 3 little kids in the back seat. He rolled down the window to say hello. When I saw his haggard face, I asked what was up. He explained that he had been hurt on the job and was awaiting back surgery. He wasn't working much and was just driving his kids around, trying to give them something to do and cheer them up. I squeezed his forearm and told him to hang in there. Nick and I walked back to our car. I drove straight up to the market and, no surprise, bought a frozen lasagna, a bag of Caesar salad, and a big loaf of garlic bread. I dropped the bag on our friend's front porch on our way home. I sent him a quick text message, alerting him to check his front porch before dinner time. As we pulled into our driveway, my cell phone lit up with a text message. It read, "Who is this?" I texted back, "Amy." The next text said, "There isn't anything on our front porch." I wrote back, "What? That's weird. I just left it there." The answer came, "Oh, we moved." I looked up at the sky and smiled. I texted back asking for their new address. I understood fully that if I was about to turn around, go back and collect the bag, if it was still there, from a total stranger's front porch and buy a new bag of groceries, if it wasn't there, then deliver it to the correct address. And I knew, without a doubt, that all was right in the world. And then we have Chapter 5, The Evidence of Kindness, by Mother Teresa. The streets of Calcutta were dangerous, dirty, and crowded. People were infected with cholera and leprosy, and other diseases that were fatal in most cases. Mother Teresa and her group of helpers went among them every day with courage and conviction to do what they could to ease their pain. One day, Mother Teresa came across a young woman in the gutter of the street, directly in front of one of the Calcutta hospitals. The woman was so ill that she did not notice or care that the rats and cockroaches were eating her feet. Mother picked up the woman and carried her into the hospital. She told the nurse inside, "This woman is dying. She needs help." The nurse replied, "Sorry, no room for her here. She's poor and can't pay, and we can't save her anyway, so we can't waste a bed on her. Now, please move along." Mother Teresa's heart broke as she carried the woman back to the street, and there she stayed with the woman for hours, until she died. Mother Teresa was angry, and she felt like no one should have to die alone, forgotten and in despair in the dirty street. Mother Teresa found an old abandoned hotel just behind the Hindu temple and started bringing in the people the hospital refused to admit. They were so sick that she knew there was no hope of survival for them, but she felt compelled to make a place they could come to die. It was a horrible undertaking, as the people who filled the rooms had open wounds covered with maggots, or had parts of their bodies missing due to disease. The Hindus from the temple did not want these people close to them and threw garbage and rocks at Mother Teresa. One day, Mother Teresa saw a man lying on the steps of a Hindu temple, very sick. She learned he was one of the Hindu priests, and no one of the temple would touch him for fear of getting his disease. So they put him on the steps to die. Mother Teresa picked him up and took him to the old hotel where she cared for him until he died a peaceful death. Hindus at the temple saw what she had done and never gave her any trouble again. Whatever you think people are withholding from you, praise, appreciation, assistance, loving care, and so on, give it to them. You don't have it? Just act as if you had it, and it will come. Then, soon after you start giving, you will start receiving. Outflow determines inflow, by Eckhart Tolle. Just because an animal is large, it doesn't mean he doesn't want kindness. However big Tigger seems to be, remember that he wants just as much kindness as Roo. A.A. Line, Winnie the Pooh. It is a bit embarrassing to have have been concerned with the human problems all one's life, and to find at the end that one has no more to offer by way of advice than try to be a little kinder, by Aldous Huxley. So that is the end of today's video. We'll start in chapter 6 next time. I hope that, especially the story of Mother Teresa, give you a little bit of inspiration as you meet strangers or people who are marginalized and treated as well. So yes, I hope you have a wonderful day.